Hello, hello, hello. All right, we're working. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Kingman. Yeah, short notice, to say the least, from Jeff and Josh. And I didn't know I'd have to follow Steve Jobs, which makes it even more fun. Let's set a pretty high bar. So our two guests that we'll bring up are, well, let's back up. This is about building brand. And our two guests that we're going to have on the panel today, Jeff Curl and Ken Block, are both synonymous with it. They've built a number of brands. You'll see some of that. We're going to show a couple videos here in a minute. They've done an incredible job, both in building brands, but building the culture, mentoring people along the way, etc. Jeff is co-founder of Stance. I've worked with him intimately for better part of 7 years. He's been a mentor to me. He's probably better known in these parts as a tech entrepreneur, and how he transitioned that into building lifestyle brands we'll get into today. So let's show a quick video, a Stance loop, that'll give you a little visual background on Jeff's handiwork.
I like that. I can't give up on my playbook, though.
The power of the socks. Yeah. It's got to be the socks, right?
I'm at the Stance flagship store, and as you can see around me, there are now shops dedicated almost entirely to socks. One man driving the sock revolution is the always dapper Dwayne Wade. The 11-time All-Star has his own line of fashion socks that he helps design. Wade's socks are created for the California-based company Stance. As of this season, Stance is the official sock supplier to the NBA.
Is James Harden good enough to get Houston to the promised land? We're taking your...
Let's go to work.
Jeff, is that James Harden in his underwear again?
You work like James. You work like James.
Rapper Big Sean, with a Grammy nomination under his belt, he knew it was time to up the game in giving back.
He's living by his song, One Man Can Change the World, which earned him that Grammy nomination.
And Big Sean was at the Shoe Palace for his new celebrity sock by Stance. They're $16. He's the latest superstar to collaborate with Stance. Others include Rihanna and Harley Davidson.
Rihanna's got a new role. Just call her Riri the director, posing and directing herself for Stance socks, and Rihanna had no problem calling the shots.
Can we try this same thing on different color backgrounds?
Yep. Rihanna has got to be the coolest boss ever, and somehow she even makes socks look sexy.
Willow Smith expressing herself in funky footwear she co-designed for Stance Socks spring campaign.
And before we go, tell me about your shoe choice.
I'm wearing a matching Stance sock to go with my lady's dress.
All right, well, good to see you guys. Take care.
Why socks?
Well, I like socks.
You like, we all, yeah, we all like socks. We all like socks?
No, I just started wearing like cool, funky socks, and kind of got into a space where this company Stance, unbelievable company Stance we kind of got into a conversation about would I be willing to design socks, and I have a few coming out. In November 1st, I have my line coming out. Yeah, see, we got the Miami.
You got the Miami Heat?
We got the Miami Heat for the championship.
Okay.
That we did.
I can't do the Miami. I'm from Detroit, so...
Yeah, that'll be yours. Yeah, that's a good
I like this. I like going on right here.
Yeah.
Honey, do you know where my beige socks are?
Check the walk-in closet.
Richard, are you looking for these? There are two types of people in the world. Those who are content to blend in. These people walk through life like beige socks, uninspired and bored. Then there are those who expect more. They're exciting. They have pizzazz. Eventually, the beige sock people get lost or devoured by the ones who stand out. Do you want to be devoured, Richard? No.
What is that?
It's the new Kia Optima. It's like the world's most exciting pair of socks, but it's a mid-size sedan. Please, try it on for size. Aren't you, Richard?
Come on, punch it.
What's up, Jeffrey? Thank you. To introduce our next guest, first off, I got cold hard cash for anyone without looking this up on their phone. Who can tell me what the DC in DC Shoes stands for? You got it. Come collect your dough. It's Drawers Clothing. That's too easy. Nice one. You want a bottle of water too? There you go. Consolation prize. You want water?
Your mic closer.
Oh. Okay. So Ken has, I've known Ken through the industry for a number of years, decades. His humble beginnings, he was a surfer and a skateboarder and snowboarder, and he started a little-known brand called 8 Ball, which is a clothing company in the early 90s, probably at skateboarding's lowest point. Everyone was riding these really small wheels called bearing covers and giant baggy pants and long T-shirts, and he started 8 Ball, which was a clothing brand with some friends, Sal Barbier, Danny Way, a bunch of guys. He then later transitioned 8 Ball into Drawers Clothing, which was, I don't know, one of the earlier streetwear brands, sort of had some tech outerwear and whatnot, and then eventually turned Drawers, well, sold Drawers and started DC Shoes with Damon Way, who is the brother of Danny Way, Danny Way, if you guys don't know, you'll see him in one of these videos here, one of the best skateboarders in the world, jumped the Great Wall of China, jumped out of a helicopter into a ramp. He was one of their first team riders. He then later went on to start Hoonigan Industries, which is a lifestyle brand centered around auto racing and automotive culture, and then is essentially a brand in and of himself. So let's play a video that kind of gives a little introduction to DC and Ken. A point of clarification, too, is that that's Ken driving in those videos, and he's a factory-backed by Ford rally car driver as well. So not just building brands, but actually steering and driving really fast and what would some construe as reckless.
Reckless.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Short notice. So we're talking about building brands, and I think for just simple context, by simple definition, a brand is a product manufactured under a name. Now we know there's a lot more complexities and a lot more spirit that goes into building a brand, but maybe we can start with the beginning. What do you think it is in the beginning of starting a brand? Is it an objective? Do you start with an objective of what you want to do with your life? Or is it a product? Or is it a name? So maybe start with that question. Do you feel it's an objective, Jeff?
That's a good question. With Stance, I had moved from Utah to a little city in Southern California, San Clemente. There's nothing to do there but surf. SC. And so, I wanted to build a business there in the community, be a part of the community, raise my kids there. So the objective was build a business there that would be fun for me and my kids. And the people who worked there could be a family business. So we built skate ramps and we built basketball courts and golf simulators and the kind of fun things that kids would want to come do. And every employee does their kids' birthday parties there, and probably Ryan's birthday party. In fact, his kids did reptile birthday party there, where all these snakes came in and all the kids played with snakes on the basketball court. I remember that.
Petting zoo. It's awesome.
Petting zoo birthday.
With a bounce house that Jeff owns.
So that was like the beginning. And then I had done a little bit of research on Under Armour, Lululemon, and Tory Burch, which were 3 brands that had one product that went to $100 million in sales. And I convinced myself, my thesis was, then building a brand is less about the brand and more about choosing a great hero product. One product that could be explosive. And if you could do that one product really well, then you could kind of build the brand. And by brand, I mean the symbolism and the abstract and the meaning behind that thing after it existed. So I looked at luggage, and I looked at jewelry, and I looked at all sorts of product categories, and I just kept coming back to socks. I felt like the competitors were sleepy. I felt like it was easy to ship, great internet product, low returns, and that we could inject a lot of style and personality into it. No one had done that. There was no Levi's of socks. It was a big market, $25 billion. So sort of with my venture capital hat on, I'm checking all the boxes of a good business, and that felt like a beachhead. So we spent a little time on the brand, the iconography, the typography. We had a very specific style, photographer that Kingman had worked with, and he used really specific filters on his lenses so that all of our photography would look very distinct. We did that on our videos, the way we positioned ourselves. Every person we affiliated with, we considered all that, but that was almost a little bit of an afterthought. It was like, let's get a win, product market fit with a product. And if we get a win there, then we can refine the brand. And that sort of leads me to how I guess I would answer your question, which is, I think of a brand like a person. When it first starts out, it's a baby. It might have blue eyes. There's a few distinct personality traits, but it's not fully defined. He gets a little older, starts to learn it, hates broccoli, loves chocolate, doesn't like going to bed on time, these likes and dislikes, and gets a little older, and by the time they're, in their 20s, this person, their persona hardens, and they begin to be able to articulate specifically who they are. And once a brand can do that, it can then unapologetically broadcast who it is to the world over and over again. But it takes some time to get there, and I don't think you ever get the privilege of doing that unless you had the product market fit win in the beginning. Because what's the point of spending a bunch of time on logo and typography and all the design elements and the visuals and the sounds and the smells of your brand that matter if you're never going to sell enough product to be in business anyway? So there has to be a product market fit, or the brand part will never matter. And then I think the more product you sell, almost the more important the brand becomes. And so that's my 2 cents on, is it an objective or not? Yes, it's an objective, but it's also product, and it's also all the elements of great brands.
Okay, great, good answer. We'll come back and dissect that answer a little bit more. Ken, how about from you? Maybe, from a starting standpoint, what were some of your driving What were some of the drivers for you?
Well, the funny thing for me is a lot of my background before I started Drawers and then eventually DC, I studied architecture. So I learned to draw and articulate things in a very 3D way. And I did that through high school and a technical college. And once I got done with that and started working in that field, I decided it sucked as a job. And I wanted to do something that came from the passion of what I like to do, which was skateboarding and snowboarding. And I participated in those sports since I was quite young, rode dirt bikes, but you know, like for me, skateboarding was really kind of the core of what I enjoyed to do as a kid. But I was never good enough to be a pro, but I was growing up in Southern California, I was friends with a lot of the pros in Southern California. So I came to a point where I just said, okay, this is an industry that I absolutely love. I have insights into it. I'm not good enough to be a pro, but I want to translate that love into something, a brand or something, or be involved in the industry. And I met Damon Way at junior college in North San Diego, and we just started off working together, and he did a lot of the product design, and I took on the marketing side of the business, and eventually the shoe side of the business, designing everything. And basically, I built everything from a very simple idea of connecting with the consumer and driving that with passion and trying to lead with, you know, kind of like what Steve Jobs said. It wasn't about how many megahertz or how it fits in a box or whatever. It was about living the passion of the lifestyle that we all wanted to live. So with skateboarding, it was a lot about, obviously, you know, the athleticism of what the athletes were doing, the personality of what they were doing, the products that they liked to wear, the art and the music that surrounded that stuff, but everything pinpointed right back to the consumer and trying to lead the consumer somewhere. And, you know, and that inspiration of the consumer then would then drive not only how our product looked, but then driving that consumer to come into the store asking for it and asking for particular things. And then from there, we use that feedback and the success or lack of success with certain products to drive us forward. So really everything that I've done has been based on really the passionate side of things that we do, and always trying to you know, lead the consumer in a way that's really based on sort of an emotional connection with the brand. So really, I think that, you know, that emotional side and the voice side of the brand, you know, kind of what Jeff was saying, was once it grows up, it becomes this entity. And we really worked hard on sort of these voices that become really an essence of this brand, because the consumer needs to connect with something they can identify with. And if your voice and your messaging is all over the place, then it's really hard for them to connect and say, oh, well, Apple, I get it, I understand it, it's consistent, and every time I come to that website or the store or the brand or interact with the product, it's the same voice, it's the same look, it's the same messaging, the color, everything. So really for me, learning over those years is really finding those points and the sort of ways that this voice comes about to really try and help the brand connect with the consumer, therefore it can grow and become a big viable business.
That's great, awesome. You know, something I pulled from there, just listening to you and both of you, is passion plays a big part of this. You have to be passionate about the business that you're in, and values. And I know Stance, you know, we sort of established values early on as far as what it means to work at Stance, to be part of Stance, what the values of the brand are. Maybe you could share a little bit about the value proposition from a brand standpoint and what that means.
Yes, I was reading this book by Tony Hsieh. Many of you probably read it. I think it was a bestseller. He made this statement in the book that he believed at Zappos that culture was the leading indicator of brand strength. And so as an investor, I see all these companies, and I would come in and size them up, and I started sort of testing that. What does it feel like in the four walls of the building? How do people interact with each other? When one person talks, do the other person all listen? Is there respect? Is there positive energy? Are people, you know, loving working here? And that sort of became, wow, every time I see that, 12 months later in the marketplace, the company seems to be doing really well. So there is this connection or correlation. I don't know how you quantify it, but I decided I believed that at some point. I was observing it for a while, I believed it. So I'm like, okay, if we're gonna build a great brand, it starts with the culture in our four walls. And when it was just 5 of us for a long time, it was just 5 of us. We come into work, we worked in this bunker underneath the Skull Candy office because we didn't have to pay rent. And so we got to know each other really well. It was a 10 by 30 room, 5 people, probably got to 8 people, 1 room. And so the values were never articulated, but they were shared and they were strong. So we definitely knew what the values were, but we never wrote them down. And then all of a sudden, I think a few years later, we found ourselves doing $25 million in revenue, and we're like, wow, none of these people know our values. And I think we just thought, oh, it would magically translate because we live those values, they would know too. And so that brought us to, wow, we're actually gonna have to write this stuff down, educate people, and we'll hire for the values, we'll promote for the values, and we'll terminate when people don't align with our values. And that will reinforce this, that this is what we believe in. And so we spent a lot of time, like one of our values is entrepreneurship. So we actually encourage people to leave and go do their own businesses. Like Ryan defected from us, and someone let him be the president of their company, and he left. It was a great opportunity for him to go be an entrepreneur. This is one of our values. We believe in it. We want to invest in our people when they leave, which is probably different than a lot of companies. And so, we put a very particular definition on what that particular word means to us. And then we publish it through the organization, and we define the behaviors of when you do that, you're entrepreneurial, and we value that. And so I think, look, that's helped us have a special culture, and then I think it translates into every product you build, every athlete you work with, every celebrity you touch. They come to our office. Fundraising for us was easy. Just say, come to our office. And the venture capitalists would walk in, and within a few minutes, like, okay, here's a term sheet, we want to talk. Because it was so magical, it is so magical, that became an incredible differentiator.
But don't let him fool you. Fundraising is not necessarily always easy unless he's at the helm of it.
So anyways, for us, the value is a big deal because the values create the culture, and the culture is the leading indicator of your brand strength. I think that's true.
Well put. So Ken, you talked about the passion of, parlaying your passions into business and conveying that, as you build a business, how do you convey that passion into both product and new people? Because to grow a business, you have to bring people, there's no I in team. You have to sell people on your dream and your vision. And at a time when, shoe companies were not that common, DC was coming in with a certain proposition. I remember, you guys had, thanks to your network, had an incredible, relationship with some of the best skateboarders in the world. So, maybe walk us through what that looked like when you're kind of pitching them on essentially your passion project.
Well, I think a big part of that, I think a big part of what you see with a lot of businesses is that there's a couple people behind them that, like Jeff here, that make the essence of those brands. And it really takes strong leadership and a strong set of goals, and then being able to understand how to translate that to your employees and also to your consumers. Because, for a lot of brands, having that consumer understand the values of what they're trying to get across, the level of expertise of whatever the product is, the quality level, all that stuff, really starts at the top and then basically trickles down through the company. So as long as the leadership of the brand is strong and can basically determine exactly what they want, not only as a company leadership, but as a company philosophy, their ethics, their morals, all that sort of stuff, it really helps sort of determine, like Jeff said, like how the company reacts, how it feels, how the creativity or lack of creativity feels inside the brand. So I think that sort of leadership is really, really important. And when I started to kind of realize that our company was growing and the brand was getting stronger and stronger, I really had like an oh shit moment. Like, this is on me. Fuck, I gotta make this good. So I read every book that I possibly could. Like Josh said, really studying marketing and figuring out, you know, why was Nike successful? Why was Apple successful? What were these companies doing to connect and to build really great products? And it's not, you know, it's not brain surgery. It's something that can be figured out. People just have to be very determined and very creative, and you can really figure out, you know, in my mind, of course, fairly quickly, like how to do this stuff. But you know, the thing is, it's not easy. There isn't a magic formula, but it really is understanding sort of what your product is and then how to connect that with the consumer. But for me, it really does start at the top. It trickles down. The more that the entire company can understand, the better. Including at DC at one point, we actually created a book. So we made a book about our whole history, about what we did, the story behind the founders, the story behind all the major athletes. Part of it was to kind of tell the public that, but part of it was that every employee that came in, that got set on their desk on the first day, read that, understand who we are, so that everyone in the company kind of had a compass as to what direction we were going and why.
So interesting side note, we're about year 2, and we get a copy of the DC brand book from Nate Morley. And he brings it into our office, and we read the history together, and we're like, one day we will do that. And we gave that to our board members at our last board meeting, the Stance board book.
Yeah.
We finally have enough history where we could do that for ourselves. It was inspirational.
It was very inspirational. Those vellum pages that were the infographics, it was awesome. Thank you. You know, talk more about the brand book? Okay. What do you want to talk about? Well, interestingly enough, one of the directions I was going to go here is, you know, taking the sort of brand, I don't know if you want to call it subjectivity, and making it objective. And you know, I've been in meetings where they're very frustrating about brand, and I feel like if only I was a brain surgeon, I'd be able to figure this out. And you're just sitting there hitting your head against a wall. But you know, taking that sort of being able to communicate clearly and identifiably what the brand ethos are and what the brand stands for, both through product and through copy, picture, video, all that stuff. You want to be consistent, because that's a big part of brand, is you stand for something. And so your point about the book, giving it to an employee and saying, hey, this is what we are, this is who we are, this is where you work. It's an extremely important point that they're on board and sort of like drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, so that they can go then personify the brand through their respective channel, whether it's sales, marketing, product design, etc. So maybe let's talk, you know, about brand book, and since they want to hear about it, you know, how long does something like that take to develop? I mean, obviously there's brand history that takes a long time to develop, to your point just a minute ago. You know, you can't just build a brand book day one and be like, this is us.
Well, you can. I mean, with a brand book, though, actually determining from day one what you're going to be, even sort of what level of product you're going to be in the marketplace, what your goals and objectives are, what the ethics of the company, company values are. You can really do that on day one, and I think at least thinking that way helps a brand start and helps give it sort of essence. It isn't something absolutely necessarily, but I think as you gain employees and are growing, I think those things are infinitely important. You know, having the history is good, but the more that the employees can understand your goals and objectives and what you stand for, the better. Because really, at the end of the day, you're only as strong as your weakest link. I mean, I used to get really mad because we would lose retailers, or athletes would get bummed at us because a secretary that answered the phones would say something stupid. It's like, shit, like, unfortunately, like the cheapest
Danny
employee.
Way? I'm sorry, spell Way?
One of the cheapest employees at the company still represents you 100%. Mm-hmm. And that is just something that we learned the hard way, but that's one of the reasons why we wanted the brand book, so that every single employee from the top to the bottom was on the same page as to what we were doing.
Really important. I think the point about, you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link, because these people are your ambassadors, in any capacity, at factories, at retail, etc.
The job title of our receptionist is Director of First Impressions.
That's good.
Yeah, she's great.
Jealous right now.
Well, let's talk about, you've likened it to, growing up as a human. You're an adolescent and you kind of fumble through things and then you become a teenager. And, along the way, is typical with most growth, that you encounter failures. And, it's been sort of classified as failures are better, well, how do I say this? You learn more from failures than you do from success, so they say. Would you agree with that statement? And can you share maybe a couple of the failures that you learned from? Maybe, I don't know, which one of you guys wants to go first?
Failures.
No such thing.
I think for me, everything's a learning lesson. For DC, I worked with two other guys. One was very artistic, and the other was a very serious businessman. And we commonly argued, but at the end of the day, our goal was to grow a company and do it in the smartest way possible. So we worked in a way what we called consensus management, that we all needed to agree basically on what we were doing in general moving forward. And we all kind of had our own personal agendas, and we would kind of let certain things slide or certain things go, even if we all didn't completely agree. But it was a way of us trying to explore the bounds of what was possible with our brand, but do it in a smart way. And but those mistakes though were sometimes things that we just said, okay, well, you have an insight that I don't, so let's explore that and see where it goes. If it doesn't work out, great, but we'd always sort of gauge the risk versus reward and work together with the consensus management to truly try and grow the brand in the best way possible. So it was kind of a way of taking a bit of the ego out of things sometimes and really look at it in the big picture way of, just like, the better good for the brand at the end of the day. So, whether or not one person thought, a particular direction was the best possible, if the other two said, all right, well, at the end of the day, that isn't really for the better good of the brand, let's try something else, we would really try and do that. But mistakes are, no matter what, mistakes happen, and you've just got to learn from that as a brand and as a person and move forward.
Cool. Jeff, what are your thoughts on?
Look, my first company out of school here in Utah, I had over 100 employees and raised $6 million in venture capital and shut it down in 2000 with the dot-com crash. So I've had a whole company fail, so I'd say yes, you learn much more in that instance than when things are going well. That said, on the branding side, making it more relevant, last Christmas, we dramatically underestimated how many pairs of socks we could sell. And our warehouse could only physically ship about 8,000 boxes a day because there was only 13 garage bays on the warehouse. You can only get so many trucks in and out. This was physically possible. And we were getting 15,000 orders a day. And so all of a sudden, people are ordering December 10th for Christmas, and they're not going to get it until January because it's that backlogged. And every one of those disappointed customers is takeaway from your brand. So it's, okay, how do we make this up? Can we flip this into something where we can make them even more loyal? And however you look at it, it's going to be an expensive mistake. So you certainly learn from those things. But on overall, on the brand management side, I feel like we've made pretty good moves along the way. We've been lucky that we've worked with good people, and people have resonated with the brand we created.
Thanks. We talked about some of those failures or learning lessons, and how you learn quickly from those. I've seen in brands that I've been associated with or worked with where you have considerable success as well, and sometimes you don't stop to smell the roses. And do you think that's an important part of building a brand? Do you want to, stop and enjoy the moment, or just keep on going, just go, just grind, as is, some places can it seems like that. So, I guess my point is, from celebrating success, what does that look like for you guys? How have you guys celebrated those successes? How important is it to your brand to stop and kind of like congratulate someone or, celebrate the win?
There's little wins along the way. I mean, the first time I saw a pair of Stance socks in the wild, like walking through an airport somewhere, and you're like, oh, wow, someone's wearing them. Like, that was amazing. You know, that's a victory. And then, you know, you're on a snowboard trip with a bunch of your athletes, and it's a blowing powder day, and you're like, yeah, that's why I did this, for sure. So you try and smell the roses, but there's just no question, this stuff is hard. Selling physical product, scaling that, is really hard. They're hard businesses.
Yeah, I'd have to say for me, I appreciated a lot of it all along the way, and there were certain moments through the history of the company that we stopped and, you know, had a celebration party or whatever, and it really, for me, like, to be able to come from skateboarding to have, you know, a company that was doing 150 million, and then after we sold to Quicksilver was over 500 million in sales, was actually really insane. So there was several moments I stepped back and really just said, shit, as a human being, to be able to be a part of this and take something from a basic thought all the way to, you know, being a part of a Wall Street company was pretty insane. So I was one of those people that really enjoyed what I was doing, because obviously grew up skateboarding and snowboarding, and then to have that sort of success was really quite insane.
Savor those moments.
Yeah, still do.
Yeah, awesome. As a brand grows, when you're building it, you know, inevitably you'll come to a crossroads where you kind of have to pick your path. There's core or growth. And sometimes core looks at growth as selling out. And both brands that you've worked with, or multiple brands that you guys have worked with, have been able to grow outside of just core to see substantial growth. What does that crossroad look like when you're there? Because then, you know, hopefully your brand grows to a point where you can take it to the next level. But sometimes there's cynicism or internal debate that's like, hey, we're big enough, we don't need to like overstep or be too capitalistic. Maybe walk through some of the thinking around that crossroad.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with whatever industry you're in. We came from skateboarding, so it's a very tough decision to kind of go through that. But I think with any brand, though, you even deal with whatever retailers you're potentially selling to. You know, if you're really trying to be a high-end brand, you know, how far down the scale, you know, as far as retailers do you go? So all of those things are really tough decisions based on sort of where you want the brand to end up. So we struggled with it a lot because we came through skateboarding when it was very small, but then the X Games came along and you had a lot more mall stores that were starting to buy it. So it was an interesting time for us, you know, trying to be able to grow it, you know, throughout the entire world. So, but like I said, it's kind of really all depends on your targets, sort of your market level, what sort of qualities and aspirations that you have for your product, and then how to meet those all in the same thing and keep everybody happy.
I know we were born in the skate and surf industry, and for a while that's where we existed, in those retailers with those folks. And at some point we signed Dwayne Wade, and we posted on it on Instagram, and the comments were all of Kingman's skater hater friends that we'd sold out, and it was all over, and that was a hard transition for sure. When I think the core customer who thought this was for skate only all of a sudden was like, oh, there's something more to this. And then it took us a while before we could like juxtapose Lizard King against Rihanna, when people started to go, okay, this is about celebrating human originality. This is about being unique and authentic and self-expression and being yourself and not homogenizing. And it's not about skateboarding. And it's bigger and it's different than that. Oh, but I still fit into that. Yeah, I still care about that. I still mesh with that value. So I think every time your brand goes through that, there's a little bit of a speed bump, but hopefully you manage it the right way and you get through it.
Awesome. Well, I think we could talk for a long time. I got a lot more notes here to go through, but I have a please wrap up notice here in front of me. I'm not sure if we're opening it up for questions. Maybe not. Well, thanks, you guys. That was very enlightening, and you guys have very colorful backgrounds and great stories. Thank you.